Hey folks, it's Frithgar here, how you doing? Welcome back to Pacific Inlet here in Farming Simulator 17. We're going to do our wrapping, and then we're going to be selling some bales, and then I'm not really sure. I'm genuinely not sure what we should try and do next, because we're not going to quite have enough to get... Ooh, no, I don't want to do that, I want to do that. We're not going to have enough to be able to get a combine, are we? So it would seem that the best option is, in fact, to make another round of bales. Now, I didn't really want to go making extra rounds of bales, but I mean, we can see how many we've got, and then we can consider whether we do extra rounds of bales, or if we actually go and start cutting down a few more trees. We could go and cut a few trees over there, and use them to pay for the... I want to do that. Use them to pay for the combine. I'm genuinely torn at the moment as to which option I should take. I think I would like to go for another round of grass as opposed to doing a load more trees. The trees are quite profitable, but we have done almost exclusively trees. And it's only been this week that we've been doing some grass work. So if I was to start another round, we've only got to do 2 lots of fertilizer. We can get 1 lot of fertilizer on as soon as this grass is cleared. And then we can start working, start fast forwarding time so that we can get the next lot of fertilizer on. Once that's done, we're then able to, we could even do the fertilizing while the bales are still in the field. I've done that before. I've actually done that in real life before, fertilizing while the bales are still in the field, after we wrapped them, mind. But they were still in the field when we started doing the fertilizing. I mean, I'm not going to. I'll clear the bales first, then we'll do the fertilizer, and then we can just start skipping forward a bit. And I think we will. I think we'll do it like that, so that we've got... we can do another cut. We've got all of the machinery here. It's all ready to go. It's all waiting. So all we got to do is just get the second coat of fertilizer on once we've had a growth stage, and then wait. That is literally it. We've just got to wait, and then we can start mowing. And we could even before... Well, I'm hoping that we'll have at least another round of mowing done before the end of the episode. I don't see why we won't. There's no reason that we wouldn't. We've had 30-odd bales from this field, haven't we? I'm not entirely sure how many bales we've had. I'll have a look in a minute. Let me just move that one over there and spin round like this. Yeah, spin round. You see what I did there? Okay, I didn't actually intentionally do that, but yeah, it was unintentional humor, and it worked. So I'm going to go with it. I'm going to run with that. I'll take that. That's something I can have. And there we go, our wrapper in action. Swinging over to this one over here. What was I going to look at? Oh, how many bales we've done. Right. Drop you out of there, and while you're busy doing that, let's just go back through and look at our stats. 33 at roughly 900, so we're looking at about 27, is it, per bale? 27,000 for a harvest. We will have to wait 1 overnight, I think, for the grass to be fully grown. But 1 overnight's not too bad. We lose, what, is it 3,000 for that? On the overnight. So we're getting pretty close then with the second cut for being able to actually afford a combine. We can make up that last little bit with a few trees. We're not going to need all that many trees in order to be able to make up the last little bit. There is, of course, the option of selling the wood chips. Now, I've not sold anything yet because I've been waiting for a great demand, but so far we've not had one. I did actually intend to go and have a look in the XML files and see if there are great demands coming up on the map, because it's quite easy to have a look and see if there are any in place. I could even modify the XML to instigate a great demand on wood chips, but I didn't really want to do that. But it is a possibility. So, yeah, it might be that this map doesn't have great demands, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't. It's just something that we'd have to live with. But I reckon that we'd find out. Before the end of today, we would find out if there's going to be great demands, because we've done a couple days now. I think we're on day 3 now, so we should be getting pretty close to anything resembling a great demand. I'm not sure I'm not sure in FS19 how the Great Demand system is going to work. I know I have talked about this briefly. I was just wondering about this earlier as to whether or not the Great Demand system is going to be the same as this one, or if they've completely revamped it again. I've heard a few people saying about the different ways that you have... Well, it's not necessarily Great Demand, but the way that you sell your grain in real life. And, you know, it's forward trading, I think you called it, or something like that. Who was it? Somebody did give a detailed description of how it's done in the US, and I think it's done pretty similar here in the UK as well, actually. And you agree a set price. You say, I'm going to provide you with this much grain before this date, which would be what you'd consider to be the end of the harvest, and you pay me at this rate for it. So what they do is they then give you the money then. They then pay you in advance for that grain. But if you have excess grain, then any extra is automatically sold at the price that it's then going for on the, you know, when it's delivered. Or you have holding costs. We do it slightly differently. We don't have the holding costs thing. So if you've got extra, you'd usually try and find your own extra market for it, or you could sell it to the same ones, but you sell it at the then current market price. But if you don't produce enough grain, you've still got to make up that shortfall, and you either do so financially, just by paying the mill so that they can go and buy... Look at that, look at the angle that turns, right? There. That's it. That is the full angle right there. It really does feel like it should turn more than that. It just doesn't feel quite right. But anyway, yeah, the market is then, if you don't produce enough, if you have something go wrong with your harvest, and you're not able to produce enough grain, you've then got to either just make it up financially to the mill, or you've got to go out and buy grain at the then market price and arrange to have it delivered to the mill. Now, this could go either way. You could end up having to pay, like, because if everybody is suddenly short of this grain, it could be very, very expensive having to buy it and make up that last little bit. But it sounds like that it's done the same in the US as it's done here in the UK, pretty much. If you sell in advance, then you've got to be able to make up the difference if if it's there. If you don't have the grain, available, you've got to find a way to make up the difference. It doesn't really matter how. You've either got to pay for it, or you've got to find some other way to do it. And yeah, it's not necessarily a great thing. Just bring that back there. Although everybody does it, because I think that you generally end up getting like a decent price for it, and a lot of farmers, they do it because they want the money early and things like that. So there are multiple reasons for doing it, and some of them make more sense than others, to be honest. Now we'll grab our trailer right here, and we'll run in through here. We're going to load up I think we can get all of these bales on. So I've put the trailer into the loading position. We get all of our bales on, and then we can start doing some fertilizer spreading shortly. What I'm thinking is we could even get the fertilizer spreader going. We just clear these bales off the field, get the fertilizer spreader going, and leave that going with the manual, the hired help, and then we go along and we do then we go and sell the bales, just so that it's doing something. Although no, I don't think I will do it like that. Okay, I didn't quite mean to do that. Ram into the bale. That is not the way to behave with your bales. So we go running down through here. I know there are some of you that would like me to be loading these manually. I don't particularly want to load them manually, because all I've got is a front loader. We don't actually have a bale squeeze anyway, and yes, we can do it with the bale spike. Okay, I know that some people don't think it's realistic doing it with the bale spike, but I disagree on that point. You can definitely do it with the bale spike. You can go and gather up your bales with a bale spike, and then you have a person who has a big roll of black tape, and he covers over the holes that are made, at the end as you're stacking them up. I've done this because I've been the person with the black tape covering over the holes, and the silage comes out just fine. So I know for a fact that you can actually pick them up like that, and it's not a thing that you need to be overly concerned about. It works just fine. So there we go. We've now got a trailer load of bales. Not quite a full trailer, but close enough. Coming down through. And nicely loaded up as well. That's what I love about the auto load. That's going to be the one thing I'm going to miss at the beginning of FS19, is the lack of auto load. But I am confident that the modding community is very quickly going to produce us a series of auto load trailers that will take care of all of our auto loading needs. Small bales might be a problem because there never seems to be small bales. I've seen a comment somewhere on one of the posts, I can't remember which post it was, but somebody said there's two things that are always missing at the beginning of any of the farming simulators. One is small classic machinery. Oh, it's nearly 1,000 actually for each one. So we're up to $25,000 now. Ideal. Yeah, one is small classic machinery. That's always missing at the beginning of a new farming simulator, because that seems to be only ever made with mods and not made with by giants. And they do seem to be missing a trick there. They did do an actual pack on FS15, but they didn't do it this time round. And I for one was quite disappointed. We did have the Classics DLC, but that was kind of a community-led project. Just back that one in there. And the other one is more realistic-looking maps. And yes, the maps that they make are absolutely wonderful. But they are aimed at newer players, younger players, players who would find it more difficult to run in a slightly more realistic map. And so, like, the general feeling of this post was, yes, wonderful game, absolutely amazing, really love it, which I thought was nice, because a lot of these posts usually sort of start off with the person really, really complaining and bashing Farming Simulator, and I never quite get those posts, because you sort of look at it like, well, you do still play the game, like, continuously, and judging by your posts, you put in many, many, many hours into the game, so why all the hate? So I really don't get that bit. But no, this particular post wasn't filled with hate. It was just that Giants... It said that Giants seem to be missing a slight trick on this, because they don't seem to be producing the small classic machinery that so many players love, and they also don't seem to produce the realistic map that so many people love. And they felt that what they should do is, yes, they should include the small classic machinery, because that would just be awesome and so many people would use it, but also produce a realistic map. So, but make it known, like at the beginning, that it's an advanced map, and it is for advanced players only. It's not for beginner players. If you want to learn how to play the game, do not play this map type situation. And I for one, I agree with that. I think that would be a really good idea. So we've got, because we see the Giants maps, okay? They are absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of attention to detail goes into those maps. A lot of care goes into those maps. And they are really, really well made. But they're also quite basic. And they're basic for a reason. They're designed for all levels of gameplay. But if they were to also create a map that was designed for more advanced players, on top of the normal maps that they produce, I think that would be really, really well received. And a lot of people would go in for that. I mean, like the Estancia La Pacho map, that one, I kind of felt that was slightly more advanced, that one was. It certainly gave a lot of scope. When you got into that map, there was a lot of scope for expansion and changing it round to how you wanted. So I can't really comment yet, because we haven't seen the new game, but I do get the impression that maybe this is the kind of thing that we're going to be getting with FS19 anyway. Like, there seems to be a lot more customization options. So maybe this is why we're not going to need to worry about it anymore. We're going to have these massive customization options. We can add in... I'm sure I read that even the animals, all the animal areas, There's a limit to the number of animals that you can put in each animal area, but you can purchase a new animal area, and you can place it anywhere you want. Which means that basically we've got a map that is fully customizable from the start, and that's the bit that I'm quite excited about, and I think would be really awesome. So all we're really missing then, it then would appear just from that Giants have actually addressed this issue of the map being not quite what some people want, and that they have to wait for ages for the modded maps to come out to get the kind of map that they're after. However, if Giants have given us a map that is fully customizable, and we can customize just about everything on it, including all the animal areas and all the rest of it, that's not really a thing anymore. They've eliminated that as being a thing, completely eliminated it. It's no longer anything whatsoever, and we've now got a map that can be anything that we want. It's literally, we can do anything we want with the map. Moving on then, so we've got the small classic machinery. That's the one bit that they haven't yet done. They haven't put in the small classic machinery, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if they do add a Classics DLC. The Farm Classics DLC that they added in FS15 was my favourite DLC for FS15. No doubt about that. The lot of machinery in there that I thought was really cool. I did find an adapted version in FS17. I think it was even released on ModHub, but I had some serious issues with that caused some major game crashes, so I uninstalled it and didn't bother using it again. I don't think it was the game itself. I think it was conflicting with... there was some serious conflict with something in there somewhere. I don't know what it was. Not a clue, but yeah, I was having major issues. I ended up having to re-record a whole load of Sandy Bay stuff several times because of crashes caused by that. So in the end, frustrated, I deleted it and did not use it again. That being said, if Giants were to officially release a Classics DLC, kind of like the one that they did, that would be incredible. And we had several classic machines in there. However, there was one that they didn't include, and one that I would love to see in there, and that is the classic, the absolute classic, Massey Ferguson 35. Now, I know there are many among you who are going to say, well, actually, Frith, if you want a genuine classic, you need to go for the old grey Fergie. The T20. Is it T20 or TE? I think it's the TE20. That's the one that came before the Massey 35. You had the grey Fergie, the TE20. That was a genuine classic Massey Ferguson tractor. Don't you dare back into that lake, or I am going to be bitterly disappointed with you. You haven't backed into the lake. Okay, you can come and work for me again. That's okay. We'll let it slide then. The T20, but that was one of the first tractors ever. I think it may have been the first mass-produced tractor to have hydraulic 3-point linkage on the back. That is a genuine old classic, but I've never really spent much time driving one of those. My dad has spent a lot of time driving one of those, and he thinks they're wonderful tractors. Me, I can see the strong resemblance between that and the Massey 35, but I've spent a lot of time driving the Massey 35, and I like the Massey 35. Slightly bigger, slightly more robust. There's a lot of improvements were made between the T20 and the T20 or TE20, I don't know. Maybe there's actually two models. But the 35 was all-round improvements. There was all-round improvements. They learned every single lesson they could from the grey Fergie. Let's just call it the grey Fergie, shall we? From the grey Fergie, they learned a lot, and there were improvements all the way through. All the way through into the 35, which they put in. And they made a significant difference, all of those improvements. So that's the one that I want to see, is the Massey 35. I think that is an absolutely wondrous tractor, and I think it would be awesome if Giants themselves were to put it into the game. We know they've got AGCO, they've got Massey Ferguson stuff, so I don't see any particular reason why they wouldn't do it. Well, not necessarily why they wouldn't do it, but why they couldn't do it. I realise that small machinery, though, is a little bit of a niche. There are quite a few people that just don't go in for the small, classic, old machinery. And that might be part of the reason that they don't want to do it is because it's just not going to be as popular as some of the new stuff. You know, you do a video with something like that one as the screenshot, and it doesn't get anywhere near as many views as something with one of these big shiny tractors. If I take a huge, great big shiny tractor like that one, for example, or that one there, and I drop that in, or the Challenger, or this Valtra over here, I get a lot more people will click on the video. Even if they don't watch it all the way through, I generally get... Now, it's just generally. Some videos are exceptions. But generally, I do get more views on stuff with big, shiny, new tractors on it than I do with the older classics, like that, or even older classics than that. So, maybe it's purely from a business point of view. They're not doing it because there's just not the interest that there is in the newer, bigger machinery. And that does make sense, that they wouldn't, you know, if there isn't the same level of interest, then it would make a lot of sense that they wouldn't invest that time, energy, and money into developing something like that. So yeah, I do understand, but at the same time, I'm allowed to be disappointed. I think while we're waiting for that to grow, we will cut down a few trees. Right? We don't, unfortunately, we don't have time to create a new field. I would like to have a whole new field here and start sort of working through another big section and things like that. It would be really cool if we could do stuff like that. We will be doing this series is kind of, you've made it quite clear that you do genuinely love this series. I genuinely love the fact that I can pick these trees up by hand and run them around. And I am going to miss that in normal gameplay. But we'll find other ways. We will find other ways of dealing with it. So I can bring these trees over here. And I'm going to need to cut the tree in half in order to get the maximum amount of cash from it. So I'll bring you over and I'll drop you down there a minute. We'll have a look. I don't want it quite in half. I reckon about there would be right. Let's just do that, and then we'll put the tape measure on it, and we'll see what it comes up with. So there we go. We've got... where is the tape measure? So we want to go like that. It's left Alt, I think. No, it's not. Oh, yeah, left... Oh, hang... Oh, great demand. Right, outgrowth sunflower. So we do have great demands. Left Alt, right click. Okay, I'm not sure. Maybe I don't need to do... Maybe it was just... No, it is. Right, that's 7.4 meters. I think I should have cut it up a little bit further. Left Alt, right click. There we go. Not quite sure if I got that right. I think maybe I should have made it a little bit longer. But there's $500. And great demand for straw pellets as well at the barn. So we got 2 great demands in place now. So we know that we now get great demands. If we have... No, I didn't want to do that. I actually wanted to do this. And I want to have a look through at storage facilities. So we don't have any storage at the moment. That one's up to 880. So really all we're waiting for is a great demand for wood chips. At the moment, wood chips are 195. Now, if we're... Yeah, see there, with the barn, you get the pellets. Oh, that's straw pellets there. Pellets are worth a lot of money. We could do pellets direct out of the field. Except that, if you have a look... Oh, hang on a minute. There's something that I wanted to do. I want to come out of that tractor a second, and I need to run over here. Have we had a growth stage? We have not had a growth stage, so we don't need to worry about that for a minute. Pellets are great. I love pellets. I love the whole crone pack, and I am going to miss that crone pack in the next expansion, so I am hoping that the add-on, the straw harvest add-on, does come out again, because I think it is really cool. I love this thing. However, it's $280,000 to be able to buy that thing. That's not particularly cheap. I mean, the baler itself is $320,000, plus the sledge on the back is another $30,000. That's obscenely expensive, but that baler goes faster than any other baler I know of. 16 miles an hour. The rest of them do about 12, don't they? Yeah. All the others do 12. That one does 16 miles an hour, which is brilliant. Right, we've just had a growth stage go through. So we'll be able to start doing some fertilizing. I'm going to do some fertilizing by night. And I don't know when the next growth stage will be. It might actually be first thing in the morning. Which means that tomorrow we can do some more mowing. We'll actually be able to do it tomorrow in-game tomorrow. I'm going to start coming along this top edge here. And I need to do 2 down the side in order to do that properly. And then I'm going to let the hired help start. I don't know how much of this is going to finish. How much is it actually going to do remains to be seen. Because it may not. It may not do all of it properly. It may end up not quite finishing this. I'm going to try and get it so that it finishes all of it. But we're slightly under 50% with the load of fertilizer. And I think we need a bit more than 50% in order to be able to do this properly. So we want to go all the way over to this end here. I'm not going to worry about going out onto the track. Because turning the corners is the bit that... that's the bit that wastes it. If we do too much turning on corners. So if I come down along here... Also, I think I'm a little bit wasteful with it. Just the way that I overlap slightly. But I'm never quite sure. I mean, if I was to use the GPS mod, that would be a lot better. It would be a lot less wasteful, I guess. I'm going to go straight up through here so that we get all of that neat and tidy down here. Trying to eliminate as much waste as possible. And we've got 1,600. So yeah, we're losing about 3 grand overnight, which is not a huge amount really. That isn't that much. So I'll bring this one over here and I'll look up through there. I want to put it about here, I think, to start with. Go like that, and I think it's... I know I'm overlapping a fair bit on here, but I'm hoping that it's... Yeah, because it does go slightly wider down the bottom there, so I'm hoping that I don't miss very much. So we lost about $3,000 overnight. So long as we don't have too many more expenses, we should end up getting another 30-odd bales. How many bales was it? Go back through. We'll have a look. It was 33 bales. We've got half a bale in the baler, so we may make another 34 bales. 980 each. I'll tell you exactly how much that is. I'm typing it into a calculator right now. So 980 times 33 is 32,340. We might get another one to make 33,000. So, but let's say 32,000. I will end up using about $1 grand in hired help costs. I'm quite happy to do that. That's something that I'm willing to give up. So that makes 32,000 onto there. So that gives us 54,000. $54,000 by the time we finish. That's going to end up being not far off of being able to buy a combine, is it? That's not far off at all. Now, I know that we could go for that slightly cheaper combine, that big John Deere there, but because it's so much cheaper than all the others, that's the reason that I wanted to avoid it. So we've got that one there at 46, that class one, and then 46, and then the header, that puts it up to 58. So it's not quite. Let's go back through. What other options have we got? We got that one there. 43,550, and then what was the header to go with it on that one? 43,54, 55. 55,000 for the combine. We also need a trailer, but 55,000 for the combine. That's about spot on. That is. I think that's also the cheapest combine that we're going to get, unless I go for that John Deere. And I didn't want to go for that one because of how cheap it is compared to the rest. I don't know, it doesn't sort of feel like it fits right. And does that actually count as fertilizing? It's going along and it's wanting to do it. I'll find out in a minute. I don't know if that counts as fertilizing when we do it on the final stage of grass. I think it does. Go to growth over here. Fertilized. Let's zoom in a minute. Like that. Right, I've only got 75 litres left, so I've not got that much left to do. But we're also getting very close to the end of the field, so it comes to there. So still doing the overlap properly. We zoom in here. It's going to go back up again. It is! It's actually counting as fertilised. That's fantastic. Even though we've had a growth stage, it's counting as fertilised. So we can slow time down in just a second. I'll get it to 7:30 in the morning. And then how much of this one? Are we going to buy more fertilizer so that we can finish that out? I think we will. I think we will actually. We'll slow time down now with 7:40. I will buy a thing of fertilizer. So the John Deere Combine, we can easily afford the John Deere Combine. I might go for the John Deere Combine, but I'm not really sure at the moment. I'm thinking probably not. Right, let's stop you a minute. We'll come over this way and we'll grab a little bit more fertilizer. So one bag of fertilizer isn't quite enough to do a full spread. No, one load of fertilizer isn't quite enough. A bag of fertilizer is more than enough to do 2 loads. To do the one full season, a bag of fertilizer easily covers it. Because we only need to do 2 spreads. 3 spreads, though, to start with. When you start off again, you need to do 3 passes, don't you? And there's not enough for that. The queue's completed their task. No, you haven't. There you go. Right. Go up through there and do that. And then we got one more little bit to do up that side. And then we got to go and park this one up and we can start on the mowing. So this will be our second round of actual grass work. And I'm quite happy with this. I think that we've done all right. We've achieved what I wanted to achieve in this series. So even if we stop the series right now, we've actually done everything that I wanted to do in this series, which was... Where are you going? Yeah. Which was to cut down enough trees to be able to make a field, then plough up, cultivate, and plant a crop. We weren't able to afford the combine, so we went for the grass, down the grass route instead. Although, that being said, if we hadn't bought, we would have needed the fertilizer. Right, let's stop you there a second. I'll carry on up here a little bit, because there's still a bit more that... Yeah, I'm not going to waste any more fertilizer on that. Yeah, overall, we... Start that one up. We could have done a crop instead. It was a choice between grass or a crop, and I think we would have had the money to do a crop. I think that the 55,000 price tag on a combine... Oh no! I've left a strip. What I've done with the fertilizing has now sort of been damaged with the... Yeah. Okay, I forgot about that. Okay, that was my bad. Right. We'll lower this one down and we'll leave this one here a minute and we'll go and get the mowers on. So, yeah, we could have, instead of buying that trailer, the rake, the baler, and the wrapper and the mowers, all of those together, they came to more than what the combine came to. Because that wrapper was 50,000, wasn't it? And the mowers were 20 grand, but yeah, it was the wrapper that was the expensive bit. It was more than I thought it was. Where are we? Where is that wrapper? Right at the end here. No, 42,000 for that one. And then you had like 12 grand for the mowers. We could have done it. It was 20,000 for the 2 mowers. We could have actually done it. We could have bought the combine. And we could have grown a crop there instead. Although we would still have wanted the baler if we were to be selling the straw. We could have just bought a forage wagon instead of the baler. And then, because the baler, that was 50 grand. So we could have bought the forage wagon instead. Because I think that one's a bit cheaper. And then we'd have been fine with... That would have actually done everything. If we'd bought the... We wouldn't have bought the baler, we would have bought the forage wagon. We'd have sold loose straw over at the barn, rather than selling baled straw. And everything else would have already been taken care of. We could have done it. We could have actually had the combine here instead of doing it the way that we did it. But I don't regret doing it the way that we did it, because I do like playing around with grass. Many of you know this. Some of you are frustrated by this because you prefer that I didn't. And you would actually prefer that I did more crops. But personally, I grew up in an area where grass is the main crop. A lot of the land near where I live is only suitable for growing grass. It's not even possible to grow crops on it. So, yeah, growing crops it's nice, and I do like growing the crops, but the grass is always going to hold a slightly more of a special place for me because of the fact that I grew up in an area where grass is the crop that we do. We don't tend to do anything else. But if we get all the mowing done today, by the time we come back next week, we will be able to rake and bale, get that done very quickly, and then we can be cultivating again, and we'll be looking at getting ourselves a combine. That's going to be the next big thing that we'd want to do on this series, although we're getting very, very close to FS17. Now, I might be able to get an early copy of the game. I haven't actually heard anything, so I don't know at the moment. And we know that they've already announced the live streams, so the live stream, I can't remember what happened last time round. I genuinely don't. I didn't have an early copy last time round. But I know that we got the live streams coming this time. But I think that the YouTubers who released videos early last time, they got the game a little bit ahead of everybody else, but I don't know if that sort of, whether they did a series of live streams on it or not, or whether this live stream thing is sort of instead of the YouTubers making the pre-made videos beforehand. So I don't really know on that. At the moment, I'm going to assume that we'll be doing this next week, and then the week after is actually Farming Simulator. It's actually 19. So next week is very likely to be our very final episodes. Don't know at the moment. No idea. But next week is probably going to be the final ones. If next week is the final episodes, well, actually, yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? So as next week's going to be the final ones, I don't think we're actually going to be able to grow and harvest a crop. We've done what I wanted to do, so I'm actually happy now to leave this series at any point. I've sort of done, I've cleared a field, and I've grown a crop of some kind. That's all I really wanted to do in this series. That was kind of the aim of this series, was to clear a field and grow a crop, and to find out whether or not people would want me to keep doing this. This sort of showing all of the gameplay, the slow bits, the more dull bits where I literally am just going up and down trying to think of something to say while we pass the time, instead of me sort of doing it how I would normally do it, where I'd chop big chunks out. I'm not cutting anything out on this series, as well as using the keyboard steering. Some of you actually seem to like the fact that I'm using keyboard steering, and this is another thing that surprised me. I didn't think that, you know, I know that most of you understand now why I use the keyboard steering for this series, but I didn't think that so many people would actually like the fact that I'm using keyboard steering as a sort of demonstration that you don't have to have a steering wheel in order to be able to play and enjoy this game. When I started doing the time-lapse series, that's all I had was keyboard steering. I didn't get the actual steering wheel until quite a bit after I started doing time-lapse. And so to start with the time-lapse, it was a little bit more difficult. The only thing that I don't like with keyboard steering is... I'm going to put hired help going here. Is that seems like the wrong angle, I know. It's coming up there. So then he wants to turn round. Wants to go in there. He's going to leave a little section now. That's alright, we'll come back and we'll grab that little section later. The only thing I don't like with keyboard steering is articulated machinery. Articulated machinery and keyboard steering do not go well together at all whatsoever. It genuinely looks terrible, especially in time-lapse. You try and time-lapse articulated machinery and some keyboard steering, it really looks terrible. It really, really genuinely looks awful. And I do remember doing that. I remember doing, like using I think I was using a case quad track in FS15 and trying to do a load of stuff. And it genuinely looked terrible. It comes back and it is, there's no words can't describe. And that's for the same reason I didn't like using the articulated loaders either, because those are really bad. And so I would stick with telescopic handler. That telescopic handler with keyboard steering I can actually get on alright with it. It takes a little bit longer. It's certainly easier that I've got a joystick. The joystick really does make a difference, and I can keep using that one even though I'm using the keyboard steering, and it still sort of fits and goes well together. But doing the... I can still do it with the mouse. Doing it with the mouse is alright. It's just a lot easier to use the joystick. It's so much easier. And I don't get the kind of discomfort that I get if I spend too long using the steering wheel. I don't get anything similar with that with just using the joystick. Mainly because I can move the joystick around my desk quite a bit. So it sort of improves the situation by quite a long margin. Now, we're doing alright on this. I can't remember how long this took. And I'm thinking that we won't necessarily do all of the mowing today. We might come back and finish a little bit of the mowing in our next episode. So we could leave it here. If, on the off chance, this is the final episode that I do, I would like your feedback on this series. Well, I'd like your feedback on it anyway. I want feedback so that I kind of get an idea of what you want moving into FS19. I know I've asked for a load of comments about what you want me to do to start in FS19, but do you want me to try and do another series like this where we have a map that is all trees? What sort of things would you like to see me doing in a series like this? Would you know, is the idea of me using the auto-load trailers, is that something of, you know, close to a deal breaker for you? Do you really, really hate me using those? Do you want to see me sort of doing a bit of a mixture with the auto-load and with some other stuff? Because I could be willing to do a bit of a mixture. I don't know how much. Do you want to see me doing bigger fields, shredding up the trees more rather than clearing them all slowly one by one and building up a bit more, and taking our time with it like we did this time? Do you want to see me doing a bit more, yeah, just like using some of the mods like the Brux Chipper, where we would just go in and shred the trees so that we can open up more land more quickly? Or is this slow approach the sort of thing that you actually really like? So I'm very interested in hearing all of these types of opinions. And also, if I am going to be continuing on with a series like this, I'm going to need things to talk about, because there's only so much I can talk about the mowing that's going on right here. And then after a while, all I'm doing is repeating myself. So I'm quite happy to talk about all sorts of things. Somebody wanted me to talk about Brexit and what that's like. It's a rather political discussion, and I generally avoid political discussions, so I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, mainly because it provokes an awful lot of strong feelings on both sides of the fence. Whether people want Britain to remain in the EU... For those of you who don't know what Brexit is, this was asked by someone from Ireland who's sort of wanting to know what's it like for someone who's living in the UK. You know, want opinions from inside the UK rather than outside the UK. Those of you who don't know what Brexit is basically Britain had a vote to remain as part of the EU, or if we were going to the European Union, that is, or if we were going to go our separate ways. And the vote came through, and it was 49% in favour of staying and 51% in favour of leaving. And shortly after the leave vote won, a large number of the people who sort of led the whole leave campaign all threw in their jobs and said, well, you've got what we got what we wanted, we'll let you take it from here, and basically just abandoned ship. It was like rats from a sinking ship. It really was. Everybody just up and left. So suddenly we had the vote that they all wanted, but they weren't interested in sort of going through the next part. So now we've got this rather tricky business of trying to negotiate a decent deal so that we can get out of the EU. My own personal view is I think leaving the EU was not a good idea, and I still think it's not a good idea. I think that the vote wasn't entirely legal, but all of that aside, it's happening now, so we may as well get on board with it. I don't agree with the reasons behind it, and I don't think it's a good idea. I really don't. I think that in the long run, united is better than divided, and all this seemed to be about was division. a few things have come to light that sort of make this very interesting. The EU started tabling some suggestions that people should be more clear. People and corporations need to be more open and honest with their taxes and where their money is. And offshore tax havens were going to be, you weren't allowed to use them anymore. And this vote was delayed, and then the vote, but it was something that was talked about a lot. Then suddenly Brexit was being talked about, and a lot of people were pushing hard for Brexit. We've got to have Brexit, we've got to have Brexit. And then the Brexit went through, and now we're leaving the EU. And now the EU has voted that you can't use tax havens to go and hide all of your money offshore and thus avoid paying tax. At around the same time that they've announced this, the UK has announced, well, we don't have to take part in this, so we're still able to use them. And all of the people that were involved in campaigning extremely hard and pouring a large amount of money into getting people to vote leave, all have tax havens, or all use tax havens, all have vast amounts of money offshore and pay zero tax on it. I'm not saying the two are related in any way, but it seems awfully suspicious. It really seems awfully suspicious that suddenly the people that were campaigning so hard for Brexit have now turned around and said, well, actually, yeah, it's a shame we're leaving the EU. We're going to keep using the tax havens and not paying any tax because we're not part of the EU anymore. And we're not going to have transparency with the money that we move into them either. It's our business. You stay out of it. It just seems, it strikes me as a remarkable coincidence. Now I could be being cynical here. I could be being very, very cynical, and it could be absolutely unrelated. But yeah, I'm not going to give any conclusions. I'm just stating some of the things that have happened. But overall, my opinion is I don't think this is necessarily a good idea. I think I've always felt that unity is better than division, and I've always voted along those lines, and I've never sort of felt that, you know, a lot of division is going to be better than a lot of unity. I can't see how loads of people going separately is going to be better than a lot of people united. Yes, the EU does have its faults. There is no denying that the system has its faults. But then so does the UK. The UK itself has its faults. Our own government has some serious flaws and faults. But I think that can be said of every single government on the planet. I don't think there is a governmental body that does not have its faults. There are always going to be problems with the way that governments are run, in part because they're trying to speak for millions of people, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's definitely not an easy thing to do. So, yeah, that's my views on Brexit. I don't think it's a good idea, and I was quite saddened when we lost that vote. Do I think it's going to be cancelled with all these campaigns about having another vote? No, I don't. Do I think that... I think it's going to happen, regardless of how much complaining is done. Do I think that if the vote had been the other way, that we had been... You know, we get a lot of very vocal people saying, well, democracy is democracy, this is what we voted for, so this is what we should have. Well, actually, democracy is the will of the people. It's not, we voted for this in 1947, so therefore that is how it will be until the end of time. Democracy is the ability to change your mind. But if the vote had gone the other way, if it was 51% remain and 49% leave, I think we would be getting exactly the same arguments about another vote from the people that want to leave, and they would be campaigning hard for another vote and trying everything they could to get another vote. So I don't think you'd ever be able to keep everybody happy, and no matter what the results of it, I don't think you'd be able to keep everybody happy. One thing that does stand out to me is the fact that the referendum was never intended as legally binding. It was always an advisory, and at no point during the campaign was it stated it should be or would be considered legally binding. The moment that it was over, it was legally binding. Everybody said, oh, it's legally binding, and they treated it as legally binding, and that seemed to me to be a little bit odd. You know, if you're going to go with something, then stick with it. Don't keep chopping and changing your mind all the time. But that's just the way that it worked out. So yes, there are my views on Brexit. I generally try not to get involved too much in the arguments. We're leaving the European Union, whether I like it or not. So I've got to make the best of it and look forward and see what happens in the future. Another thing that I like to do is I always do like to try to look forward rather than backwards. I don't like looking in the past constantly and saying, oh, I wish it was like this, or why can't we go back to this? I like to look to the future and see what we can... You can learn lessons from the past, but there's no point in going back to the past. I've heard people saying, oh, why can't we just have another vote? Right, well, what's going to happen if we do have another vote? You really think that at this point, if we then suddenly just turn around and say, oh, well, actually now everybody wants to stay, and we're just going to like rip it all up and say, oh, well, we're really sorry, we'll carry on, we'll just pretend the last 3 years never happened. It doesn't work like that. It's not going to work like that. It doesn't matter how badly people may want to stay or leave or what. The whole vote thing was done, right? It's all carried out, and nothing, even if we voted now to remain, it's going to have significantly changed the whole relationship that the UK has with the EU. We weren't even fully in the EU. We did not have the euro, okay? For one, we've never been part of the euro. We've always kept our own currency. And that has been a bone of contention for several member states, that Britain was able to opt out of having the euro as their currency and reap benefits of a lot of other parts of being in the EU. So we didn't have the single currency, but we had a load of benefits that we felt we wanted. We weren't even like fully in the EU. We were picking and choosing. We were cherry picking out the best bits, and that was something that several other member states didn't like. Yes, we were paying a significant contribution towards the EU, but we've also been taking a lot of money out of the EU as well in subsidies and so on. And we were one of the largest net contributors to the finances in the EU, but in part that was because we were cherry-picking the bits that we wanted. That's a very rough summary, okay? That is a very rough summary, and anybody that knows anything about it will tell you that, yes, that is an extremely rough summary of it all. We're not going to be able to go back to just being part of the EU as we were. If we turn around and then say to the European Union, oh, by the way, we're really sorry, we didn't actually mean it, we don't want to leave, they're going to have a field day, right? They're going to absolutely have a field day. They're going to rip us apart, and they are going to get everything out of us that they wanted the first time round. A lot of these member states... you know, I feel probably rightly so, are going to turn around and say, well, look, you've messed us around big time, right? Seriously messed us around here on this. You've messed with currencies all around the world doing this. You've had a massive impact on currency and policies and all sorts, and it's cost everybody a lot of money doing all of this. And you think you're just going to go along and say, oh, by the way, we decided to change our minds? No, it don't work like that, sunshine. If you want to change your mind, if you want to be a little mind changer, that's fine, but there's going to be penalties to pay. First and foremost, you're going to have to start abiding by all of the EU regulations, not just the ones you want to abide by. That's going to be the first thing that's going to turn up. They may not actually say as such at the moment, but that would be one of the early things that would turn up, is we would have to start abiding by a lot more regulations than we have done in the past, and sort of participating in a lot more stuff than we have done in the past. It's not something that we can erase now. It's something that was... So, yeah, we're just going to have to follow it through and then see what happens. I don't know what it's going to bring to us. I really don't. I'm hoping that it'll be better than... Well, I don't think it's going to be quite what the doomsayers are saying it's going to be. You always get extremes. Every single thing that happens, you get extreme margins for everything. Some people are convinced that it's pretty much going to be the end of the world. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. Do I think it's going to cause potentially some hardships for people? Yes, I do. How bad it would get, I've no idea. I haven't got a clue. Really have no idea on that one. So it's literally it's a case of wait and see. But yeah, that's about it really. It's going to happen. That's my views on Brexit. I didn't like it. I voted against it. I still may not like it, but it's going to happen, and so we may as well get on with it. We can't go back on it now. I don't honestly see how anybody could just turn around and cancel 3 years. Things have changed now. There's been significant change, and so we've had these years now. What was it? 3? Might be 2 years. Anyway, significant changes have happened now in the world, and with this country, and with the European Union. It's not. We can't just turn back the clock and pretend it's not happened. It's not an option. There's no do-over on this. We've already done. Okay, it was a one-way ticket basically. We've already done, and do-overs aren't going to happen. So we'll see. All we can do now is sort of tighten our seatbelts and buckle up, Buttercup, because it might get rough. Because that's about all we can do. We'll see. In another couple of years' time, we'll know whether or not it was a good thing. Anyway, that is all I have got time for today. So if you've enjoyed this episode, then please head down below and give us a like. And if you really enjoyed it, then please tell your friends all about me. Get them to come and watch as well. That would be awesome. And until next time, thank you very much for watching. This is Frithgar. Goodbye, and see you later.